Good morning. Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. We're the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders. I want to thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can join us here in Crowdcast. Oh, actually, you can't join us in Crowdcast, not today, but we would love to have you at some point in our Crowdcast video room. If you're watching from Facebook Live, please feel free to make comments. And if you have any questions, let us know. I may or may not be able to see them until after this recording is done. The same for you in YouTube Live. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share. And before we get into today's discussion, I just want to tell you a little bit about Nonprofit Utopia. Again, we're the ideal community for emerging nonprofit leaders. We provide consulting services as well as an online community and coaching for the next generation of leaders. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact us at nonprofitutopia.com. My name, again, is Valerie Leonard. My email address is ValerieFLeonard@nonprofitutopia.com. And you can also go to our website at nonprofitutopia.com. Follow us on Twitter as well. And this month we've been focusing on disaster preparedness and recovery. We have worked with nonprofit organizations doing a number of these discussions and webinars focusing on ways that we can actually prepare our businesses for, quote unquote, the new normal. So we started off with focusing on a disaster recovery plan, and then we had another webinar on how you can figure out how much cash you need from now until the end of the year, and using that information to help you apply for SBA disaster recovery loans. And that information can also be used as you seek emergency funds for funders. And we also had community discussions, looking at ways that folks in the community can use social media to have an organized response to COVID-19. And we also did some action planning demonstrations. So, and I'm forgetting yesterday. Yesterday we had Leighton Olson on. Leighton was sharing some of his experiences with community networks as well as municipalities and universities, sharing really sage advice as to how we can tap into community networks and universities and other institutions to begin to do some community responses using technology. And we're going to be doing a continuation of that conversation as well as highlight some blog posts from Tutor-Mentor Institute. So today we have as our guest Dan Bassill. He is the founder of Tutor-Mentor Institute, LLC. He has been around a number of years sharing strategies on asset mapping as well as data visualization, helping community organizations with a particular interest with youth serving organizations. But I'm not going to try to memorize his resume. I'll let him come to you in his own way, tell you his background, as well as share some highlights and give us strategies as to how we can use data maps data visualization as well as maps to develop strategies to help us weather the storm of COVID-19. So without further ado, we have Dan Bassill. Thank you, Dan, for joining us.
Thank you, Valerie, and good morning to you and to everyone who's listening. We tried to have this session yesterday, and my technology didn't work. So Valerie and Leighton did a really good job of talking about the work I've been doing. Just a little bit of background. I started leading a youth tutor mentor program in Chicago back in 1975. And continuously led those programs all the way up to 2011. So I've spent an awful lot of time each year saying, how do we get kids and volunteers connected? How do we help them stay connected? How do we help the result of the work we do be that kids each year progress 1 year further toward high school graduation, college, and then jobs. And how do we get other people involved to help make that happen? How do we influence donors? How do we influence media? How do we influence policymakers? And how do we get kids and volunteers connected? How do we help them stay connected? How do we help the result of the work we do? Is that your computer picking up the sound, or is it mine?
That was my computer. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so technology has its interruptions. Anyway, in my just brief saying what I'm doing, many people's ideas would have glazed over because it's too much information. Mm-hmm. And initially, in doing my work with kids, I did it as a volunteer while I held full-time retail advertising jobs with the Montgomery Ward headquarters in Chicago. So in that role, from a central office in Chicago, we supported 400 stores all over the country, trying to help each store be as good as it needs to be in serving customers, and using weekly advertising to tell customers, come to our stores, we got a deal for them. Mm-hmm. Well, over the years, I began to see that the media stories about violence in Chicago would spend a lot of money drawing attention to a bad news, but they wouldn't follow through on that story, saying, where are all the places this was happening, and what can we do to help programs grow in those places so that it doesn't happen? I left my paying job at Montgomery Ward in 1990. We converted our programs to a not-for-profit. And then in 1992, we created another version of our kids program to try to help kids go from 7th grade through 12th grade and beyond. But at that time, we said, let's fill this void. Let's create something that is a knowledge base. Who are all the different organizations doing some form of volunteer-based tutoring and or mentoring in Chicago? How can we aggregate that information in a way that it's available to anyone?
Okay, then. Be careful. Okay, we are having a slight technical difficulty. Please don't leave us. I thank you so much in Facebook Live for joining us. Dan is going to be reconnecting very, very shortly. What I love about the work that Dan does is he has been very instrumental in developing maps that will help nonprofit organizations to understand the needs of the community. So he would do a number of asset maps that will map different assets. And here Dan is now. I'm sorry. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So as I was saying before my screen went out, that we said, let's create an organization, collect this information, shares this information. What can we do to help volunteer-based tutor-mentor programs be available in all the places they need to be? That was the Tutor-Mentor Connection, which I led along with our kids program until 2011. And then since then, I've led only the Tutor-Mentor Connection, but under the Tutor-Mentor Institute umbrella. So this, what are all the things we need to be doing question really leads to an awful lot of things that we need to know. And in that context, it becomes mind-boggling for people to try to understand it. Mm-hmm. So I began to create visualizations and use geographic maps back in 1993 when we started the Tutor-Mentor Connection. And I'm going to share my screen now. Mm-hmm. And point to
okay. And if you just bear with me, I'm going to make that our major screen.
Okay. And so I started putting together visualizations and maps. So when a newspaper story tells something bad happened, can we create a map to show where it happened and to do overlays on that showing indicators like poverty, poor schools, health disparities that show why it happened, and then to show existing organizations in the neighborhood around where it happened that provide some sort of services that help youth in those neighborhoods with the goal of preventing it from happening again. And while violence moves around the city randomly, if we could consistently create map stories following media stories, we thought that we could create greater visibility more consistently, drawing more attention and then more resources to help existing programs grow, but also to help identify places where more programs were needed. And I've been doing that for the last 25 years. Mm-hmm. So we started using a blog back in 2006 to share ideas. And I'm going to walk you through one blog article that I put up recently.
Okay. And we're waiting for Dan to reconnect. He is getting ready to walk us through an article that he has written for the Tutor-Mentor Institute blog. He is going to be sharing with us ways that we can utilize data to do visualizations as well as develop maps.
I'm back again.
Okay, awesome. Okay.
And I don't know why my screen keeps bombing out on me, but I seem to be able to get back pretty quickly. Yeah. So let's walk through this blog article. This is on tutormentor.blogspot.com. And since there's articles that have been written for the last 15 years, there's over 1,000. If you scroll down the side of the blog off to on the left side, each of these tags, if you open it, it leads to articles on that particular category. Mm-hmm. In this article, which I wrote on March 30th, I start out saying, as you look at this information, think of these things. How do these ideas apply in your community? Whether you're Chicago, a Chicago neighborhood, another city, another country, how would you apply these ideas where you are? Second is, how do these apply to COVID-19 or climate crisis or public health issues or poverty or digital divide? And then how about you share these ideas? Once you create a blog article, once you create a map or a visualization, how do you get more people to find it and look at it? Mm-hmm. So if you go through my blog, you'll see that I use maps and visualizations many, many times. This is just one example. In this particular case, I'm talking about what are all the things we need to do to help kids move through school and into jobs and careers. So this concept map, down at the bottom here, if you click and open it, it'll go to the actual map. I'm not going to do that yet. But in the clusters here, it's elementary school, middle school, high school, college. This is a 12 to 20 year period where at each age level, kids need a variety of different supports. In fact, anyone could go through an exercise with a blank sheet of paper and at each age level, draw spokes out to the different supports that were available to them through their family and their community that help them move more successfully to the next level, and the following level.
That's great.
If you live in an affluent area, there will be more spokes. Mm-hmm. If you live in a poverty area, there not only will be fewer spokes, but some of the spokes are negative ones. The influence of gangs, drugs, lack of jobs, stress, health disparities. So if you move down here a little bit, so I use another map. I enlarged the one section on the one map, and now looking at elementary school kids, if I enlarge this just a little bit more, hopefully, you can see that all the things kids need. Let's come back here. They need good teachers. They need social emotional support. They need homework help. They need technology. They need a variety of different things. What the concept map visualization allows is, if you look at this node here on homework help, there's two boxes underneath it. The left-hand box, if you click on that, that goes to an external library or external websites where you actually find those resources. If you click on the box to the right, it goes to another concept map that goes deeper into that particular category. So these are an example of if in any community that is trying to raise kids, they can start out saying, what are all the things kids need? Then they can begin to do an inventory. Which of those things are now available? How do we support them? And what things are critical needs that are not available? And what can we as a group do to help make those available? So if you scroll further down, I go to another graphic, and this is a different version of the top map. The arrow here is birth to work. And the ladder here is at each age level, there's a variety of different things that need to be available, or that youth will have more difficulty moving from that level to the next level. And the little map down here in the corner shows those things need to be available in every poverty neighborhood, not just a few places, and frankly, not just for a few years. If you think of this ladder, imagine if the middle section was missing. So kids who started school, went for 3 years, all of a sudden there was a cliff. There was no support for the next 3 years. Those kids drop out, they get off the timeline, and many of them never catch up.
Wow.
That's what happens in America and the world, frankly, because of the lack of consistent public will and public support for all the different things that are needed for all these different years. So if you move further down, there's a bigger version of the same map, and it kind of illustrates the point I was just making. If you take out a section of the support system, it's like saying to a kid, I'll give you birth, I'll raise you for 3 years, then you go out and find another set of parents on your own for the next 3 years. It doesn't work.
Wow.
So then moving further down, now you look at a map, and this is a map of Chicago. The shaded colored areas are poverty areas, the west side, the south side. In this particular map, the green stars are locations of tutor-mentor programs. The red icons here, these are locations of violence. So a map can be used to tell us a lot of stories. It can be show indicators of where there is a great need for help. And then it can add overlays to that map saying who are organizations in that area trying to provide help. What can the community do to help those organizations, all of them, get the resources, the talent, the ideas to be good. And then it could look at other neighborhoods and say, well, where are the voids where we need to add more that's missing right now? On these maps, you can go a step further, and you can add another layer of information of assets. Who are the businesses, the churches, the hospitals, the colleges that are in these neighborhoods? And because they share the same geography, they ought to be working as a group to help support the growth of kids in that area. So if you scroll further down, so if you think of the blue box here as the information base, then anyone, and if you think of this as a funnel, at the bottom of the funnel is all this information. Up the sides of the funnel are all the people who could be using the information. And on the left side would be all the people who could help: volunteer, donors, foundations, businesses, hospitals, faith groups, universities. Almost anyone could be involved doing something at some time on a consistent basis to help organizations that are in different areas of the city that are working to overcome social problems, get the resources, the talent, the things they need to be good. If someone maintains the information base, then anyone can be doing what we're doing today, leading the conversation, talking their friends, family, neighbors through the information, and saying, what can we do to draw attention to this information today or tomorrow or the next day? so that more people are consistently shopping at all of these different retail stores of hope and opportunity to help kids and volunteers connect with information and ideas that help kids move step by step, year by year through school and into their adult lives. So as I summarize, the maps can serve as blueprints. A construction company uses a blueprint to build a building. Each page shows different things people need to be doing, and they work from the first step to the last step. And they've got to have financing for the whole project. The work of building a blueprint of all the things kids need in different neighborhoods is the same concept. And frankly, it needs the same consistent funding sources, and that's what's missing. So on this article, I go down further, and in this graphic, I'm describing a 4-step process that I've been applying that other people can apply to it. And step 1 is getting the information. Step 2 is getting people to look at the information. Step 3 is helping them understand the information and learn how to apply it. And step 4 is reaching out into a particular neighborhood, to particular places, to apply what you learn to help those programs do more to help kids or to help that neighborhood. And all of these, there's links embedded into the article that goes to what I'm talking about. So if you go down just a little bit more, I added a couple more maps to this article. This is another concept map. In this case, I'm pointing to a variety of different platforms available throughout the United States, even in the world, that are data and mapping platforms. Anyone can use any of these platforms to create a map story in a blog article that says, this is where a problem exists. These are places, these are things they need, and these are things we can do. Who wants to help? And using the map, we have a better chance to assure that help gets to all the places where it is needed. Without the map, we could fill a stadium with people doing something, and they still would only be doing something in a few places. That's the power of using maps, not only to show where things are needed, but to show the flow of resources into those places and to give some sense of accountability that the resources are there, the programs are there to do the things we all want to see happening. Moving down, this is another concept map. The COVID-19 has illustrated how much the digital divide is impacting poor families, kids who are out of school and are expected to learn and do homework from home when they don't have the digital access. I saw some place where it said, well, go to the parking lot in the school, you get Wi-Fi. You know, if the rich kids were being told to go to the parking lot in school and use Wi-Fi, you could be sure that problem would be fixed. But
Right.
the poor kids that have this problem, it hasn't been fixed for a long time. Our challenge today is how do we get the rich people to care enough to spend their time, their dollars to help the poor people have all the things they need as well. Again, if you go through this article, the different links under each node go to external websites, external libraries, more information. Just the last one. So I hear people say we ought to all get together. Well, who is we?
Right.
You know, and how do we know they're getting together? So in the youth development world of Chicago, we at one level represent all the individual youth organizations that are around the city. At another level, it represents intermediaries. Who are the different organizations working to bring some of those organizations together to connect, to learn from each other, to help them do good at what they do? Well, this map shows that there's a whole bunch of different intermediaries who aren't necessarily talking to each other very well.
Right.
But if, in any issue, whether it be COVID-19, whether it be climate crisis, whether it be a job development in the Lawndale area, someone needs to put together a map of who are the people that need to be involved, and then use this as an invitation tool to make sure they're all getting the invitation. But also use other kinds of mapping. When you have a meeting, you could use a network analysis tool like there's something called Node XL that if you use a hashtag on Twitter for a community meeting, you could track the people over a 7-day period who tweeted that hashtag and put it on a visual map so you can begin to do an analysis that says, are all the people that need to be involved actually in the conversation? And who's missing that we need to reach out and try to bring them in? And this isn't a one-shot deal. This process is ongoing. That means if, for instance, if you have quarterly meetings, each quarterly meeting, you ought to create a new map and ask yourself, did the people who came before come back again? Did new people join us? Is the movement growing? And if not, what can we do to fix this? Donors need to be funding this process at whether it be the neighborhood level, the city level, the national level, for people to be able to collect the information, draw people's attention, and so forth. So that's just one of 1,000+ articles on my blog that I encourage people to take the time to look at them, think them through, then write their own articles telling people they know what they saw and what it means to them. I go back to what I started with. How do these ideas apply in your community? How do these ideas apply to COVID-19, the climate crisis, public health issues, poverty, digital divide? How might you share these by way of your own blog, concept maps, visualizations, and social media? So that's a walkthrough. Now, I'm going to take just a second to see if I can open one of these links to show you what a concept map actually is. So now this is the live map, and this is the first section that I was talking about in terms of first grade to fifth grade. And over here at homework help, if I click on the one node, you see a label pops up, and when I click on that, it goes to another map. These are different homework help resources available in the Tutor-Mentor library. And if you click on a node under the map, let's say arts and literature, let's see if this is going to come up. So now this is the library that I've been maintaining for 20 years.
Wow.
And each node, download books from 45 different sites, mapping American experience book by book, philosophy and children's literature, reading rockets. Each one of these is a resource, cool classics that if you browse the list, these and you're looking for help at learning at home, there's a lot of resources available that you could find. And I'll back up just available through this map, which was available through the map here. Now, as you look through here, I've got nodes on some of these maps, but I don't have nodes on all the maps. So that means that there's a role other people could take. This could be a high school group. It could be a college group of helping to populate these maps with greater information. If you go back to the blog article and down here when I talked about intermediaries, I really appreciate the fact that my computer is still working and that people are hopefully watching this or will watch it later on as a recording.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a group that could really benefit from this. I can share this information with the group that is, trying to figure out what to do with the kids for the summer. So I can put you in contact with those people. I'll share this recording.
Is that the My City, My Chicago, My Future?
The mayor's group? This is Kids Express out in Boston.
The mayor is leading an initiative trying to help summer programs reach more kids. And for those who are interested, there actually will be a Zoom meeting this Monday at, I think, 1 o'clock. And you can contact the mayor's office and find information on that.
So great. Thank you.
This map is opening up slowly.
Okay, so while we're waiting for this to open, I'm curious, what tools did you use to develop the website? This is, so I guess I'm looking at the website platform, but are there other tools that you're using to support the website, in the data visualization, like
Well,
what?
first thing, I'm not a technologist. And for the last 30 some years, I've always been able to find people to help do the technology for me.
Okay.
So my first website was built by a company led by the brother of one of our volunteers. And
Okay.
then that was replaced by a website built by one of our volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2006, that was rebuilt by the technology department at Indiana Purdue University.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2012, that was moved to another hosting, also by someone at Indiana Purdue. And right now, we're going through another rebuild where I've got 2,000 links in the library. And
Wow.
I starting last week, I have to move every single one of them to a new platform one at a time. So that's taking time. The concept mapping, I use a free tool called CMAP tools, CMAP tools. And a concept map is like a blank piece of paper. If you look at this map here, I start out by putting a node in the middle, and I give it a title, Chicago area intermediaries. And then from that, I draw arrows out and create another node, which I give it another label. And I can add to this. I can go into the map and edit it and have it updated in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. Now, do the colors have any significance on this particular map?
No, it's just to try to give it a little differentiation between the different categories.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. Again, that map is a piece of art, and you have to try to make it viewable, if you will.
I got you.
Let me, if I go over to the blog articles here, just to, you can see here on maps, there's 246 articles in this blog that have maps in them. And so if I click on the link, so this is, I started building a directory of programs in 1993. We published that in a printed edition, and it could only reach 300 or 400 people, and it was out of date by the time it was printed. In 2004, we put that online in a searchable directory where you could put in criteria. We sorted our directory by type of program, pure tutoring, pure mentoring, combination tutor mentor, and by age group served, elementary school, middle school, high school. So those sort categories, you could search. I'm looking for a pure tutor mentor program for high school kids, and it would narrow down the number of visuals on the map to just those that fit that criteria. In the platform built in 2004, we could narrow that down by zip code, so that if you're looking for programs on the west side of Chicago, you could click in the Lawndale zip code or the Austin zip code, and then the map coming up would show only what's available in that neighborhood. And for a planning group resource, that's really powerful. But it worked like a Google search. If you know what you're looking for, you could search and find it. What we wanted to do was reverse that. If you started out with a map of the whole city, where are all the places where help is needed? What are all the different programs available in the entire city? And then you could narrow the search by types of program, and you could zoom into different neighborhoods. That was launched in 2008 and 2009. And then the economy bust in 2009, 2010. And we ran out of money, and we haven't been able to update that since then. So in 2016, I created a less sophisticated map using something called Map a List. And that's what you're seeing here. Each of these green dots is someone on this list that does some form of tutoring and or mentoring, either school-based or out-of-school time hours. And if you click on the green icon, it tells you who it is. You can zoom into this map so you can narrow into a neighborhood. And through that, you can create a screenshot that you could use in a blog or in a planning process. So just scroll down a little bit further on here. So here's another example of maps. Here's where
wow.
WBEZ does great map stories. And so this is one where they talked about talking digital access. The red areas are low digital access in Chicago. The blue areas are high access. And so I took a screenshot of their map, and then I used a map we had created using a pretty sophisticated mapping tool back in 2008, 2009. Again, this is, you can see that the same areas are on all three maps. And these are places where not only do you need digital access, you also need non-school learning, tutoring, mentoring. You need grocery stores. You need a whole bunch of different things.
Wow.
And
powerful.
Yeah, so maps. This is kind of if we close what I'm talking about today, I'm talking about a lot of information that talks about how do we fill neighborhoods with programs helping kids and families and keep them there for a long time. These circles represent groups: your church, your business, your college, your fraternity, your drinking buddies. Groups of people can get together and look at this information. They're doing it now with Zoom all the time. This represents you, me, anyone looking at this. What we do to spend time understanding what's here is the first step. What we do then to invite other people to look and understand it with us is the second step. And as this person goes to these people, and each of them spend time looking and then reaching out to their own networks, we build the movement of people that is needed to be involved solving the really complex problems that we face in America and the world. So that's my spiel. This is tutormentor.blogspot.com. My website is www.tutormentorexchange.net. I'm on Twitter at Tutor-Mentor Team. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. And I really look forward to connecting with people.
Oh, this is awesome. Dan, thank you so much. And before you go, I have just a few questions, and I apologize to the folks out on Facebook and YouTube. We're not going to be able to answer your questions live, but if you have any questions, if you have any comments, please leave them, on my Facebook page or one of the Facebook pages that you see this video, and the same for you guys out in YouTube. And we will make sure that we get answers to your questions. And then, I want to just ask Dan Bassill a couple questions before we go.
Sure.
All righty. So as I was listening to you and looking at the different maps and how you showed the various assets in terms of transportation, in terms of youth serving organizations, et cetera, it occurred to me, if once you identify where those various assets are, is it possible that you can begin to use those data, maybe not directly, but begin to identify what your basic standards will be? So for example, if you were mapping schools, right? So if you were mapping schools, for example, and if you had some code to indicate how well those kids were doing or how well networked the kids are, can you begin to use those maps to set a certain standard for what a community should have in terms of basic offerings or basic competencies that we need for our kids in their schools and their after-school programs?
Well, that's where the information library comes in.
Okay.
When we started in the 1990s, what are all the things we need to know? Can we collect and share everything that we need to know and do? Not everything we know, but everything people all over the world know. So over 25 years, that's the web library. It has research sections. It has how-to sections. It has one section on process improvement, collaboration, knowledge management.
Mhm.
And as people are looking for answers to questions, the first place to start is in the library, saying, how have other people already done that? What can we learn from other people that are doing something? If
Mhm.
you think of this, the graphic I'm showing right here, imagine at the bottom of this pyramid, you're in the operating room. Do you remember visuals of the two people down on the floor of the operating room, the patient in between them, and there's an amphitheater type setting of other people watching the operation.
Right.
As long as those two people know everything about what they're trying to do, it's fine. But as soon as a question comes up that they can't answer, like you just raised a question, someone in the amphitheater could say, I know that answer, and they come down and join them on the floor.
Mhm.
And that group on the floor could grow over time as more questions arise that need answers for. At some point, someone's going to ask a question that no one in the amphitheater has an answer for, but someone says, I think I know someone who does have the answer. Let me go find them, and I'll bring
Mhm.
them into this conversation. And when they do that, the operation continues. Uh, at some point, a question arises that no one has ever asked before. And then
Mhm.
someone says, well, I'm doing a research project right now. Why don't I add that into what I'm looking at? And when I get the answer, I'll bring it back to you. That's where we are right
Mhm.
now with COVID-19. We have a problem that we don't have answers for. And we have people all over the world who may have answers, but they're not
Mhm.
connected to each other in this type of a process, to where if someone says, what about this? Someone could say, well, here's a whole bunch of information about that. Let me bring that into the conversation. We don't have to reinvent the wheel if we could find a way to connect with all the information around the world. And at some point, then it's only a new information that we have to research from
Mhm.
time to time. Now it's a matter that operating room actually, figuratively, needs to be anchored in many, many different places on the map, focused on the well-being of people in those places.
Mhm.
Does that
Okay.
help?
Yeah, it does. So if, for example, you are a community organizer, right, and you are trying to organize a community response to COVID-19, one of your first approaches, I would imagine, based on what you're sharing, might be to look at what assets the community has already to actually address those issues, right? So I'm guessing you might consider looking at what the schools and what services the schools are able to provide. Looking at the churches, are there churches that are giving out food? Looking at what organizations might be organizing to give out masks. And you can map all of those resources, I would imagine, as well as the organizations that are providing those resources. And then you can identify the gaps in services, if you're such an organization that wants to make sure that the community is served in all areas, as it relates to education, as it relates to health and wellness, just connectivity during
That,
this.
that's exactly right. In fact, the page you're looking at on my screen right now is a page on my website where I have all of my concept maps. And
Okay.
if you scroll down on that, one of the concept maps says innovation, collaboration, visualizations. And if I click into that, and I hope it'll open up.
I'm just amazed you have thousands of resources on this blog and you know exactly where to find each one based on the questions that I raise.
Yes.
That's amazing.
So in this section of the map, the subsections, this section on collaboration,
Mhm.
if I don't know if how fast this is going to open up,
Okay.
but there's probably more than 100 links in here to websites talking specifically about collaboration and community building.
Wow. And
And
I can share with you a free webinar that I did on collaboration that might be helpful to
well,
folks.
that would be something to get added to the library. So just click each one of these. Chicago Commons, the CS squared constellation model of collaboration, social change. There's just so our ability to aggregate information about how we might do things to solve problems means that instead of reinventing the wheel, we could be learning from the wheel. These sites that I point to in many cases are hubs themselves with
Mhm.
many more resources and many more links. So it's an exhaustive search. It's an ongoing process, but the information is there, and it's constantly being updated by myself or by the people I point to who are also updating their own libraries. But what you were talking about, one of the links I've got in the library here someplace is the Austin Coming Together group. I think you may know them.
Yes.
They have done an excellent planning process that incorporates a lot of the different thinking that I'm talking about here. They don't point to a library of information similar to what I do, but their process and their use of maps to identify areas of need and assets that are in the neighborhood as an ongoing process. That's an example of
Mhm.
something people could look at and say, gee, if they're doing that there, can I learn from that and apply it to where I am? Imagine if there were 3 boxes in this chat right now, you, me, and a donor, or
Yes.
a community, the community needs, and a donor. When someone says, I want to duplicate what Austin is doing, there's got to be a donor or more that steps up and says, I will provide the flexible, ongoing, multi-year operating resources for you to do that. Until that happens, then you're just scrounging to try to put something together. And as you
Mhm.
know, you can do this as a volunteer for a certain amount of time. But unless the funds come forward to do this work, it doesn't get done as well as it needs to be done. And that's just a planning process.
Right. I had no idea how much information you had on this website. I mean, I knew it was extensive, but I didn't realize how deep it went.
I've had people for the last 20 years. I recall one guy that ran for governor recently. I've had a lot of other people who, when they went through a presentation like this with me in my office one-on-one, got to exactly where you just reached. They said, I had no idea there was so much here. But unless people spend the time looking at it and get into a conversation with me where I can lead them further, they won't have any idea. It's just too much to comprehend, and it's too much to communicate in a small soundbite. And yet,
Mhm.
what are all the things we need to know and do to be able to solve this particular problem, whatever the problem is you want to solve?
Mhm.
And instead of, you get a bunch of people around the table and they scratch their heads and they say, these are the things I know. And as much as that is, it's only a small amount of what the world knows.
Right.
If we can tap into more of what the world knows and apply that to solving our problems, that's step one.
Mhm.
One answer the world has not solved is how to get the resource providers into the conversation and provide the flexible, ongoing funding to put these ideas to work.
Have you talked to folks from the MacArthur Foundation about this?
I was told many years ago that my thinking is not systemic. And to give them
Sorry, I have to laugh.
to give credit, one of the handicaps, because I ran a tutor mentor program myself, what people mostly saw when I was talking to them was kids and volunteers sitting in a space over by Cabrini Green, one small program in a big city. And they were not able to look past that to the tutor mentor connection that was looking at trying to fill the whole city with a whole bunch of small, medium sized, and big programs. And it wasn't until 2011 when I separated from the kids program that I've been able to focus more consistently on tutor mentor connection type things, but I haven't had the resources or the organizational support to do that. In my blog, the most recent article, let's see if I can go back here. That's me right there.
Yeah.
That picture actually is from the blog of a teacher in Washington State who wrote an article about what I was doing.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I had to laugh because I think what you're doing is really the epitome of a systemic approach.
Well, that's so the article I posted this past week, April 21st, reaching out to universities, a virtual learning opportunity. This picture right here is a student from South Korea sitting at a computer and looking at my blog. And looking as she looked at it, understood it, then she created her own visual interpretation of what she was looking at, which we then shared through different blogs and different websites.
Mm-hmm.
This student could be any one of millions of young people, any place in the country, sitting at their home computer, looking at this information, trying to understand it, and then creating something that tries to help other people understand it. Remember that visual I showed you before, the information-based you, the people you know.
Right.
This is the information base. This is you, what you do to create something that shares what you're learning with other people is an activity anyone could be taking. And right now, during the lockdown, when kids are at home and teachers are trying to find something that motivates kids to learn, why not point them to the Sustainable Development Goals? Why not point them to my race and poverty map? Point them to newspaper stories and articles about the bad things happening to poor people and say, why don't you research this and begin to think it through? Create your own concept map. What do you think the actions are that would lead from where we are now to where we want to be? Instead of I say we need to do something, pointing to somebody else, do your research and begin to frame your thinking of what that thing we need to do is, and then be bold enough to share it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. All righty. So you've answered all of my questions, and I really thank you so much for your time. I'm hoping that if anyone who's watching this on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, that you feel comfortable, leave your questions. And if you want Dan to get in contact with you, I'm sure he will respond to those comments as well. He's seen the Facebook page. If you want to share your contact information, you can share it with me and I can forward it to Dan. And my email address is ValerieFLeonard@msn.com or ValerieFLeonard@nonprofitutopia.com. But if you want to contact Dan directly, Dan, your contact information is, again?
I'm at Tutor-Mentor2@earthlink.net. I'm on Twitter at Tutor-Mentor Team, and I'm on Facebook with under my name and under Tutor-Mentor Institute. I'm also on LinkedIn. I really try to draw people to Twitter because a hashtag on Twitter can be used to draw people together around a particular topic. I mean, you don't have to watch the whole flow of Twitter to be able to search for a hashtag to find a conversation. And I can't do that on LinkedIn or Facebook as well as I can on Twitter. But a lot of the people that I would hope to be in this conversation are not yet using Twitter that way.
Okay.
I really appreciate you coming on and bringing me with you this morning. We started out trying to find out why my technology did not work. And during the course of this presentation, it did not work a couple of times. But we were able to pull my screen back up real quick. So we didn't lose too much continuity in what we were presenting. So thank you for today. Thank you, Leighton, for filling in for me yesterday. And I look forward to continuing this and talking to people as a result.
Okay, awesome. And thanks again. And thank everyone for listening. We're going to have, I guess, a copy of this available within about, I would say about 5 minutes or so. We encourage you to share this information with other folks, share it widely on Facebook and on Twitter and by email. This is information that can be readily applied to not only a COVID-19 response, but to your day-to-day planning. All righty. So until next week, you take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
All right.